Good evening. My name is Eric Lyncham. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Inland Wetland Commission meeting for the town of Monroe. Today is April 9th, 2025, and the time is 6:39 p.m. Will everyone please stand to recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll take a roll call of the members of the commission and staff present during tonight's hybrid meeting. Please answer here or present, starting with myself, Eric Lyncham, chairman here. Brian Kelly, vice chairman here. Rick Smith here. Rick Stewart here. Benjamin Sabia here. Paul Fernandez here. Mark Zamarin here. Catherine Gallagher, Planning and Zoning Administrator.
Here.
And Andrew Brodman, Inland Wetlands Enforcement Officer.
Here.
Before we start, I'll read our mission statement and how the meeting will proceed. The objective and purpose of the Inland Wetland Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland wetlands and watercourses within the town of Monroe. Please note that this meeting is being conducted utilizing electronic equipment in compliance with State Law Public Act 21-1. As such, this meeting is being recorded and will be available to the public in compliance with state law. If you're attending remotely, you will automatically be muted and unable to unmute yourself. If you wish to speak during the public participation portion of the meeting, please use the raise hand function. If you are participating via telephone, press *9 to activate the raise hand. Staff will announce your name and unmute you when it is your turn to speak. The video feature has also been disabled for public participation. Anyone participating remotely should state their name and title, if applicable, at the outset of each occasion, such that such person is speaking. All votes taken during which any member of this body are participating remotely shall be taken by roll call unless the vote is unanimous. The chat features will not be utilized nor considered during this meeting. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have an applicant make a presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. I ask the applicant to keep their presentation as concise as possible. The commission will then review town, staff, and other independent comments. The meeting will then be open for public comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair or commission. After any and all comments pro, in opposition, or in a general nature are made, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. Please keep comments or questions direct, or a time limit of 3 minutes may be imposed. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for new questions unless new materials are entered in as evidence or testimony during their response. Please keep all comments pro and con specific to inland wetland related matters. Other applications that do not involve a public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask for general participation from the public. Is there anybody in the chambers who'd like to speak in a general nature for this evening? No one in chambers, anyone online?
Nobody online.
Nobody online, okay. Then moving on to regulated activities, we have IWC 2025-04, file number 1528, 88 Main Street. Proposed excavation of roadway and installation of new catch basin pipes and plunge pool. Town of Monroe applicant James DeMayo, Town of Monroe engineer.
Because this is just an application acceptance, James is not online to present, but I could give you a rundown of what the project is. It's essentially catch basins being installed on Mill Street. If you're familiar with Mill Street, it is coming off of Main Street, and it connects Main Street with Maple. Right next to 7 Maples is a nursery right on that corner. There's excessive ponding and flooding that happens on that street right there. So this project is to pull up the road, regrade the road, add catch basins and a manhole, And the only place to disperse the water that it's collecting is in a small wetland area. The wetland area is about 585 square feet. That's what's going to be disturbed. So James is proposing a plunge pool right there and adding plantings to compensate for taking over some of that wetlands. In addition to that, this project will make the health of that water better because as it is right now, the water that is collected by one of these catch basins empties out directly into a water course without being treated at all on private property, which is owned by the Seven Maples Nursery. So he's going to close that pipe off, redirect it. It's going to go into the plunge pool, an opportunity for that water to get filtered, and then will disperse itself down to another water course that's a little further down. So in front of you is an application for that project, and it's to be accepted either a public or a regular hearing.
Do you guys have any questions or comments required to determine whether it should be public or not?
Is this all, is this, I can't tell from the drawing, is it wet, where you're dumping it, it's actually wetlands?
Where we're dumping it is actually in wetlands, not upland review area. He was trying to keep it out, but the grades wouldn't work to get positive drainage. To get positive flow, he needed to go a little bit further back, which puts it into wetlands.
Is he planning on closing the street or just,
Closing the street,
not while they're doing the construction, is it?
it'll have to be. They're going to chew up the road
Right.
and they're going to install catch basins. So yeah, he'll have to close off the road.
You know, for how long? I'm just,
No, I don't. No, I don't.
there is alternate ways around that.
There is alternate ways around it, and I could tell you that street, if you know that street.
Yeah, I know. It's right around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah,
When you're looking at the nursery,
So there's a fire
is the
station.
road on the right?
it's the
or on left?
street on the left. If you're looking at the front of the nursery,
Yeah.
it's the street on the left. There's the volunteer firehouse just to the left of that,
Right.
which is where these catch basins start, up by the volunteer firehouse. So yes, that street will have to get closed off.
Right. I'm just thinking, because that street is going to get closed off, well, it's easy to get around it. I probably should just give the public an opportunity to chime in. What you guys.
James could talk more to, at the next meeting, or he could talk more to how long this project will take.
Right.
I could just take a stab at it and guess that it's probably 3 weeks,
I was going to say several weeks. Right.
probably 3 weeks, maybe a month,
Which
something.
is why I was thinking probably should give a chance for the public to maybe make a comment.
Staff
I'm
has-
just saying houses or anything there,
There are
but
no houses, no.
so.
So Maple,
There's going to be any real comments
What
from the
about
public?
the, I know this is not wetlands related, but just in terms of public interest. The fire department, do they have another way out with that blocked off?
yes. I hope so. It would not impede movement through the firehouse at all.
Right. Okay.
And staff has no objection to making it either public or regular.
So it's up to you guys to decide if you want it public or regular. I mean, I think it's fine either way. But we need a motion one way or the other.
Okay, a motion to move to a regular hearing.
Okay?
I'm going to make a suggestion. If it's going to be a regular hearing, can we have the regular hearing at the next meeting, which is May 14th? And the reason for that is we have two public meetings opening to be presented at the next meeting. There's no time constraint on this, so if you want to make it a regular hearing,
We can hear it next
the
week.
motion will be for the following, not
One more time?
Oh, so we're not going to have it, it'll be in 2
Saying
weeks.
that even if it's a regular hearing.
two meetings for,
Play it to follow it.
That's
I
okay.
amend my motion to do what he said.
motion to accept IWC 2025-04 for a regular hearing to open on May 14th, 2025.
We have,
So, I'm sorry, April 23rd,
that's fine.
April 23rd, 2025.
I will second the motion to make this application a regular hearing on the meeting following next, which is,
Whatever you-
So the next meeting is April 23rd. The meeting after that's May 14th.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Roll it back.
Roll it back.
Let's roll it back. This is gonna be
Yes.
the date.
regular hearing, June 3rd,
14th.
May
Right.
14th.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Is that
Okay.
unanimous? Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
To pass on to him?
Yes.
It looks like he's putting in 15-inch pipes,
Yep.
and if you use his lovely plunge pool table, it's supposed to be a 10 by 7 plunge pool. It looks a lot bigger than that,
His plunge pool is
according to the plan anyway.
10 by 7.
Yeah, I know, but the plan looks,
Okay.
it's the 20, well, it's supposed to be a 40 scale, but if you use the visual scale, because it's shrunk, it looks like it's like 40 feet, 30 feet long by, I don't know, I would say 20 feet wide. So I would just suggest you take a look at that.
Okay, I believe that is for the over excavating, including the new plantings that go in, but I'll have him clarify.
What size pipe are we talking?
What size plunge pool?
No,
10 by 7 is what,
10 by 7.
it's 15?
10 by
15-inch
7.
pipe, he's asking.
Oh, size of the pipe?
Keep in mind, he's gonna be here to discuss this.
Okay.
All this stuff. We don't have to. get-
no, I understood. I just figured if there was something, you could just tweak it and come in with a revised plan. No, then great.
Yep, I will make a comment. Any other specific information that he should be prepared for? No.
Okay, moving on to public hearings, IWC 2025-01, file number 1518, 1314 Monroe Turnpike, proposed 13-lot, single-family residential cluster development with new road and drainage facilities, Bird's Eye Estates LLC applicant, J. Edwards and Associates LLC representative, withdrawn. Okay, any,
The applicant just, or the representative just said the applicant would like to withdraw at this time.
like, they may come back later, or they just, or they don't?
They did not
Say it.
specify.
Indication of that, and so we have gotten some inquiries of people that have seen this agenda, so I'd just like to read his withdrawal email, which says, "I spoke to my client and he's withdrawing from the application and does not give permission to walk the site," because that was a discussion about potentially having a site walk. And that's it, period. That's the end of it. So we did not get any more indication on whether they would be coming back or not be coming back.
Okay. That's easy. Moving on, we have no deliberations, no bond releases. All right, then moving on to agent activities report.
So I issued an agent approval, IAA 25-6, file number 1529, which is 58 East Maiden Lane. It was a new attached garage addition with stormwater management within the upland review area. I issued the permit to construct a two-car attached garage. It measured 24 by 22. It was 80 feet away from flagged wetlands. And there were 3 conditions of the approval, which was to install silt fence to be inspected pre and post construction, a rain garden to be installed for stormwater management, and that is located about 40 feet from the flagged wetlands, and to install wetland markers along the wetland line. So I issued that agent approval. Any questions, comments? Moving on to enforcement. IWV 2024-03, file number 1495 is 68 East Village Road. We've seen this before. We've all been talking about it. On March 27th, after our other meeting, our last meeting on March 27th, I issued a voluntary compliance letter for remediation with the following conditions. That a written timeline would be presented for the work to be completed. And that timeline had a deadline of April 10th, which is tomorrow, with a completion date no later than June 1st. That's what we had discussed at the last meeting. Cliff Cusio is here tonight, the property owner, to address the commission.
Cliff Cusio, 68 East Village Road. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I was a little confused. I was here for a meeting prior to traveling. And just a quick recap, I came in last year with a plan. I had started years ago, talked to Mr. Noonan, the interim director of wetlands, along with the engineer, showed them my plan for a 100-foot gravel drive in the garage. You can't do it that way. You got to get reviews. So I put in for the road opening. We modified that diagram. I found it. I'm glad I did. We went through a lot of meetings and discussions about the size of the pipe. Can you fill all the way up to the next driveway to make it safer? Let's not have a hole between the two entrances. The amount of gravel, how deep they wanted me to go over the pipe, meet the code on the pipe. I remember all that because that was the reason why we took that in. And we went to 30 feet to make sure it tapered into the ground correctly and had the right gravel. Did the work, Noonan and the town engineer inspected it on site, passed. I thought everything was done, and the contractor left. New commissioner, director, I get a violation, it's confusing. I followed the permit, followed the diagram. So ended up in front of you folks. I got a little heated and said, I'm going to just remediate and file agreements. He said, oh, don't be so hasty. We want to work with you. Can you get a soil engineer, get the wetlands flag? I remember saying, I don't want to spend the money just to get stopped. He said, no, that's not what I do. So I got one of the best. I got the soil engineer. I actually presented a plan with all the details that were more than you asked. It looked like the garage is outside of the wetlands. It's very close to the borderline, but to get to it, I have to pass through that 15-foot section that is close to the wetlands and the upland area along the property. We got into it again last meeting, and I said, oh, let's not just remediate and just solve this. And he said, no, because some of you said, look, it looks like if you're going to apply for this, you're going to have to go over that gravel anyway. So let's get a permit in. Let's get your paperwork in. Get surveyors, get us a plan, get us an application by July 1st. And I left town for business in Carolina and Kentucky. And I returned 2.5 weeks later to a letter demanding that I remediate by June 1st. So now I'm confused because what happened to July 1st application, now I have to remediate something. I have to find a contractor because the contractor I used was a town employee. I didn't know at the time. I was told it was all right to keep using him. He doesn't want to go near this, and I can understand why. So now I'm back to where I started with you folks last year. Was I'll just remediate this and make it go away, and then don't be hasty. Now I'm being told to remediate by June 1st. So here's my ask. I'm in a review area, upland review area. I'm near wetlands. I'm in a review area. We followed a permit. We put gravel in, made sure the height of the gravel was conducive to the requirements of the pipe. Can I get two people, maybe from this commission, to come out and look at this and evaluate what is detrimental about where we are with the project, what we did in the first phase, with accordance to the permit, in that corner up by the other driveway, and how that gravel is detrimental or damaging to the wetlands down below. Because right now, I went out to do some measurements this week when I got back. And all the natural growth and the grass that was planted, it's all taken root. It's all, it just looks like the rest of the area. So I'm going to go dig that up to find the stone wall, which is below the grade of the gravel, because the stone wall and everything was below the grade needed for the gravel over the pipe. I'm trying to wonder, like, is there, it's a review area. It's not a, you can't do anything in here. It's like, you can't do anything without it being reviewed. Can we go look at it maybe and say, let's not disturb it right now, but you got to get your ass on an application in here by July 1st. And we go back with that. Because if I got to remediate this, I'm going to step back. I'm going to get help, assistance from legal counsel, and bring out all the documents. I couldn't find anything where it said that we were to stop or we were doing it wrong until after the fact. And that's kind of bothering me, that I'm being told to do what I was going to do last year, to do it now anyway, even though I was told I didn't have to do it, which is remediate by June 1st. I got to find a contractor to come in there and remediate that. I could do it myself, but I think it'd be easier if I just had a guy come in here and scoop it up in 15 minutes and move it to the back of my other property. But we're, this commission, I'm not trying to insult you, but we've wavered. I mean, what you're telling me twice has changed. And I'm back to where we were last year, which is I was just going to remediate with a temper tantrum and leave. And you all said you were going to work with me. Now it's like I got a timeline to remediate before I get the application. I don't understand that.
Well, let me explain why things changed, because the last time that you were here, you stated that we were under the impression that you were considering selling your property and moving. Okay? And you said you changed your mind and that you planned on staying, and that your house was no longer listed, and that it was removed, yet it wasn't. Because when we looked at
It was never actually listed.
okay,
And actually,
several of us found it.
Illegally, it was just got listed 30 minutes before this meeting. I just got back and decided to list it officially tonight. So I don't know what you're digging into that says
It was on for sale
by owner.
that it was listed. It's
Yeah,
a listing,
yeah, but I do
okay?
that I could do that anytime. I understand.
But that means your house is for sale.
Absolutely.
Okay, you told us it wasn't.
It was speculative, yeah, but even,
That's not, it either is or it isn't.
so what's the rule that says I can't?
You're
What's the
welcome
rule
to
that
sell your
I can't-
house anytime you
What's
want.
the rule says I can't maintain and improve my property while I'm trying to sell
You absolutely can, but you assured us that you had no intention of leaving because we were
it.
concerned.
My trip south changed that, and I don't have to explain it, but if you'd like me to, I
You
will.
don't, but you do have to, when you stated that your plan was to remain in this area,
Right.
and that we said, okay, if you plan on staying, then we'll work with you because it sounds like you're here for a while. Rather than deal with the violation, because you want to make improvements, let's work with you. And then we hear that your house is for sale and the story has changed and then we asked you to come back and you didn't come in.
I've always made it clear that my intention was to do this to improve the value of my property. I've stated that for
And
you.
that's absolutely okay. We don't have any issue with you trying to improve
So the
your
point was,
property.
I would be doing that project before I left.
I think it's worth acknowledging that we were at every step, you call it wavering. We were working in good faith that you were trying to reconcile this and remediate what needed to happen.
Absolutely.
And that's a good faith. That's a good faith, understanding between the commission and you.
Absolutely.
When we asked you if the house was listed for sale and you said no, it was not. But then we found out that it was. And you're talking about.
If you go through, I did say it was on for sale by owner, but it was not listed with the MLS. I did state that.
So you're talking in terms of, in my opinion, and I don't know if this is the right, it's
just-
technicality,
it's
but you're
semantics.
trying.
No, I
it's
understand, but
semantics.
the decisions I make to sell or stay in my house.
100%.
With a business
And as-
trip I made after our meeting.
And as Chairman Lindstrom
And I
said,
didn't
we don't
change
have.
that until tonight with a
No.
legal
No,
contract.
No, it was
we-
listed 2 weeks ago.
We
It was
respect,
listed
No,
we
no,
respect
it's listed 2
the
weeks.
good, the good faith aspect of this, of this effort.
The realtor's actually been being here for me.
If you could, sir, if you could, sir,
Tonight at 6 o'clock.
if you could for a moment, sir.
Talking
We don't
semantics.
take, we don't take objection to you trying to sell your house. But the good faith aspect of this, of you working as quickly as possible to get this resolved, this has been ongoing for a year. If you were to sell the house and it was for sale by owner, it's a real possibility that that the sale happens and these issues remain for the new homeowner.
Absolutely.
And that's something that changes our perspective.
Absolutely.
Between the dealing in the logistics of if it was for sale by owner or listed on an MLS with a real estate agent,
And
that doesn't matter.
Sale by owner is for my attempt to see what the market would do if I put my house
So
up.
for us as a
But now
commission,
it's with MLS, it's Connecticut and other state laws called
Understood.
disclosure.
That's-
I cannot sell the house without disclosing the violation.
A recap here.
sure, absolutely.
So let me, listen, I think the commission, right, because I can remember back to last year as well, trying to help. The thing is, when we heard that the house is not for sale, and then somebody looked it up and it was for sale, if you want to, or it's for sale by owner, it's still for sale, right? That was a couple of weeks ago when we had our last meeting.
Agreed.
That's, to answer your question, that's the reason why this was accelerated, okay, to June for whatever the date was we picked. That's the answer to your question as to why this was accelerated. because there was no more good faith on both parts at that point, right? So that's all we're saying. If you're willing to work with us, we're willing to work with you, but like, we have to be communicating properly and not like one party says something and then it's found out not to be true. We don't want to get into semantics, right? The house is for sale, it's for sale, right? It doesn't matter if,
So we shouldn't be talking about my house for sale. Let's talk about the property.
let's talk about the property
That's
because
semantics.
we need to know, do we still need to accelerate it? It sounds like it is for sale now. It's
It is
actually listed.
now as of 6 o'clock tonight. Yeah.
So we don't want to leave the problem or the issue to a potential
And
another.
the realtor's aware of this wetlands issue that I'm trying to resolve. I mean, it's called disclosure. It's illegal for me not to
It
disclose.
is now because it's listed.
Well, that's a technicality. That's a technicality.
Yeah, but isn't that a good thing?
But,
I mean, it's more likely that the problem will get fixed,
right,
being that
Right.
and quickly, the fact that it's for sale. Because if someone comes and says, I'll buy in 30 days, he doesn't want this thing.
The
I'm,
next owner is interested in that garage for commercial, because I'm in a commercial zone and farm zone area. That was the whole purpose, was to make that piece of land usable, to improve the value of the property. That seems like it's dead space. That's always been my story to everybody I came to talk to. I want to increase the value of my property by using that piece of land out there. That's how this all started.
So that, and you've indicated that there's frustration on your part because this commission has wavered. I stand very strongly that that's not the case. We were trying to help. To your point, if a buyer comes and it's disclosed and we're happy for you to be selling your house if that's what you want to be doing, that has nothing to do with us, except for the fact that this would be something that would carry forward. And if a new buyer purchased a house and that violation remained, and that happened between now and July, I find it highly improbable that they would be able to remediate that by July, that they would be able to have a plan put forth by July after buying the house. And that will only push this problem further down the road. So I think that honestly, we were candid with you about why we changed our position. We wanted to help you through this process. I think right now the best thing to do is to remediate by that June date. I think it's in everybody's best interest.
Understood. Thank you.
Can we hear what your current plans are for?
I'm getting a lawyer. I'm gonna go back to the original plan, permit that was granted and signed off for 30 feet, was inspected and approved before this came out. Thank you.
what does that do for the current violation?
The violation will stay on until it's remediated.
Okay, so,
The other option is you escalate it to a citation. They would have the opportunity to appeal it to the citation officer, the wetland citation officer. And then they make a determination, based on that. Oftentimes, if there is an attorney involved, they'll come to citation hearing, and be a representative for the
So-
applicant.
his original application, he says he has an original, a permit,
He's talking about his DPW permit.
which is what?
He has a street opening permit that he got through the Department of Public Works
Okay,
for the curb cut and for the work above the pipe. That gives him the availability between the edge of the pavement road and his property line, which is considered the town of Monroe right-of-way, to do work within that. That's what DPW has jurisdiction for. I have seen that original permit. It's a hand-drawn map. It goes beyond that property line, is what he's saying the holistic project is to DPW. DPW granted a permit, but they're only granting the permit in the public.
right, and the violation is beyond that.
So we've always been very clear that this violation is for within his property, so from the property line towards the wetlands. We don't disagree with the work that was done within the physical right-of-way. We disagree with what was done from the property line into the property.
Okay, so his stance of, well, I'll just go back to the original permit is really irrelevant.
His argument is that DPW granted him to do the work in its entirety,
What does that mean? On his property?
including on his property.
But they don't have the authority to do that.
But DPW doesn't have the authority to do that.
Right. So he can tell us that all he wants, but that's not the case.
And that's how we got here to begin with.
Right. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we don't need to do anything until this June 1st deadline, unless he does something.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair.
I mean,
We gave him, in the letter, we gave him till June 1st
Right.
to perform the work.
I don't see any reason to change that at this moment in time.
I think that's very
I
fair.
disagree with that.
However, we also gave him until April 10th to respond to this voluntary compliance.
He did respond.
He did
He
respond.
responded.
So if we want to just hold till June 1st,
Or he could still submit an application, right?
right, for the whole project.
I mean, in theory, yes, he could do that by June now, just instead of July.
Right.
But that's a problem in terms of the logistics of getting that.
Right.
But it appears that either I understand there's frustration here, right? But it would have been nice if he stayed to hear what was just said, because that's what he's going back to consider is not going to cover and resolve his case.
He knows that. We
Okay.
have had, I can't even tell you how many
Okay,
conversations.
as long as you feel comfortable with it.
Right,
I just want to be fair, right, so.
Which is why I had asked him, what are your plans? You know, are you requesting something from us kind of thing? And he said, no, a lawyer.
Get my lawyer.
Right. So if he had requested something, we could have said something, but we can't say anything because it is what it is. In my mind, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but
Yeah.
So I'll monitor it. I've been in communication with him. It's not like he's not been
Right.
responding to
Right. I
emails.
would expect at this point, he or his attorney will contact you at some point with
Yeah.
some commentary and then
I'm
we'll.
afraid it's just gonna slow things down.
It's going to slow things down for him too, now that he has his house listed.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not good for him either, because this is
Right.
disclosed now.
Right. This is officially just right. He might have gotten away with it before if it was on that other website, not officially listed, but listed. Right.
It's now on record.
Now he has to disclose.
Yeah.
And what buyer would,
And there's not one person in the planning and zoning department that is not aware of this. So if any realtor comes in on behalf of the buyer asking questions.
right, this will be red flagged. Right. And is it my understanding that's not a commercial zone or industrial?
It's not.
It's not, it's an RF.
How does he,
He can say whatever he wants on
Well, let's see, he's got how many acres?
his website.
So I mean, he can plant a garden and he can do his farm.
no, but
No, he
he's
claims
implying,
it's a
not
commercial.
even implying, he's suggesting that this,
In the listing, it said, previously approved, for a commercial business.
Right.
Which I think was the whole idea of the garage over there was to be able to keep,
he even
to be able
mentioned.
to be able to keep vehicles there, which would increase the value of his property. And I think that was the whole idea of the project.
Now, the town of Monroe in general does permit home occupations within any of our residential districts. It's a low intensity use. It's for things like if you're an architect or an accountant, things of that nature, you're like a one-man shop going out of your house. We do allow you to run a business and have that be your legal business address. And then we do have something called a home-based business permit that you have to go in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval. But we do permit that. There are several of them in town. So it's not impossible to have some sort of business
Right, but it's not
on there.
zoned as
It's
a
not zoned for
commercial or industrial, like he said.
So I think maybe the wording, if he has a half decent real estate agent, I probably get a call from 2 to 3 real estate agents a week, making sure that whatever they say on their listing is actually true and accurate, and they're fully disclosing if it's in a historic district and what that means and things like that. So if they have a half decent agent, more times than not, I'll get a call just so they can make sure they're being clear.
Okay, all right, so I think we're all in agreement. The timeline remains. We'll see what he does. We'll go from there.
And I'll follow up, if I haven't heard anything from anybody by June 1st, I'll follow up with just a drive-by to see if the work was performed, if the violation was lifted.
Right.
And if it's done to the satisfaction of the sketch that you have there, I'll remove the violation.
And if not, then we'll bring it back to the commission and recess.
Right.
All right. Sounds good. All right, moving on.
All right, moving on. IWV 2025-04, file number 1525 is 155 Richards Drive. Removal of plus or minus 50 large trees and other vegetation within the upland review area, possibly in wetlands and possibly on town of Monroe property. So the homeowner has been very active getting professionals out there. He's had the property delineated. I was out there today because just this week he had the property surveyed. So on the site visit, it turns out that some of these trees are on town property. Some of them are in wetlands. If I can't really tell by the stumps whether the trees are in the wetlands that came down or just the trees that had been cut down were felled right into wetlands. So there's a violation there, but he's also contacted a wetland scientist to do a remediation plan. So he's very actively on it to try to remediate this, to try to fix the problem. I did notice he is online if you have any questions for him, but I don't know that there's anything to really discuss. It's up to you.
Have something to contribute? I mean, unless you guys have any questions.
No, I did visit with Andrew.
Yep,
It is a significant amount of trees and a significant portion of the property. All the trees are felled away from the fence, away from the property. And there are some very large stumps that's obvious, and some are right in the wetlands. I don't know what's confusing you as far as the number of trees or what?
because I can't see exactly how many trees. Also, according to the homeowner, and I can confirm some of this, that not all of those trees were cut by him. So some of them are fresh cuts. Some of them, he's only been in the house, I think he said 6 months, maybe 9 months. Some of those trees were probably felled before you could tell from the top of the stumps. Some are weathered. So he's not denying that he cut down trees. He's not denying that he might have encroached on the town's property. He's not denying that, some of those trees that he cut down aren't in the wetlands. He's not denying anything. He's just saying some of that was not me. I'm willing to fix and remedy the problem. So that's what I mean by when I say, he's working with us, but he's got a pretty good remediation a pretty big job there. The town's going to have to grant him permission to have those trees even taken out, because all of the trees, the whole tops of the trees, they're 30 feet into wetlands.
You go right across wetlands.
Into Monroe's property.
Into Monroe, town of Monroe's property, right? So just dragging those out of there is going to create more disturbance.
Right.
And it is a viable, healthy wetland area.
So my point is that it is very significant, the amount of trees and the distance from his house. But like you're saying, like he's saying, that's true. We noted a couple of stumps that were not within the last 6 months.
Correct.
But that being said, there still is quite an issue. So what's the resolution then?
So the resolution is he's already contracted with a wetland scientist to come together with a plan, and they'll have an IWC remediation plan done, an application put in, and you'll all be able to review it and comment on it.
Just as another point, there was some garbage. There wasn't a lot of care taken by these residents, him or his previous resident. I won't blame who's who, but there was balls and trash and so I want this person to understand that, hey, this is really serious.
He understands it now. He does. There's also 2 drainage pipes that empty out into this area. So I instructed him today to make sure that is shown on the remediation plan.
That includes the long trench that we saw being done along his.
Correct.
neighbor's side?
Correct.
It is a drainage.
So that's a drain pipe, yep. But that is probably more than 100 feet away from the wetlands, though. On that side, I did not take a tape measure to it, but I'm going to guess that is probably outside the upland review area.
We stayed behind this fence, and I honestly didn't see where that was emptying out.
Right. It empties out right on the other side of the fence. Right there.
All right, so moving on to Pepperidge.
30 Pepperidge, I'm just giving you an update on that. So the homeowner actually got 2 wetland scientists to come out. You'll all be happy about that. One came out last week, gave her a proposal for a remediation plan. She has another one coming out next week for another quote on that person doing the remediation plan. She will make her decision on who she's going to hire for that. She said based solely on who can do it quicker, because she knows that we are anxious to get her to fix this violation. All right, I'll follow up with her again next week, make sure that she signed a contract with somebody and find out, and I'll update you at the next meeting.
Progress though, right? I mean, she was struggling to get people
Right.
out there to.
Yeah, yep. She did make progress. Voluntary compliance, so a couple of things I was working on. IWC 2018-06, file number 1143 is 485 Pepper Street. I know you guys have asked about this before. This is the Grosso Monroe aggregates, I think is what it's called, up on Pepper Street. The only thing you were asking about the size of the piles, and that's outside of our purview. That's a zoning issue. But something that was coming up on their weekly reports is the breach of a silt fence. So I went up there, and they have a steep slope going down into wetlands, and they have a silt fence set up over there. Sediment has breached that silt fence a couple of times. So I issued them a voluntary compliance to fix the fence and stabilize the slope. Take the sediment out of there. There was some sediment in the wetlands. So in the voluntary compliance letter, I had them pull that sediment out using shovels and wheelbarrows, no machines. A lot of machines around make it really easy. But shovels and rakes, and then hay mat, erosion control mat on the slope, and to get some seed on that slope so it'll stop breaching.
They were responsive.
That was just the other day, so I don't know if they got it done yet, but I will follow up. Yeah.
But they were like,
Oh, yeah.
in good spirits about it.
They were in good spirits about it, yeah. They're actually happy that they can do that so they could stop fixing the fence. Moving on.
Pepper Street has significant dirt in that area from this yard, I believe.
Yeah, I've asked them before. I've had to call and ask them before to send the street sweeper out there, because there's a lot of trucks coming in and out. They do have an anti-traction pad, traction pad. They do have one, but there's a lot of trucks in and out of there. And they do have a street sweeper on site. They do it twice a day.
Okay.
Or so they claim they do it twice a day. Yeah.
Well, appreciate that they're voluntarily complying, and just note to them that, hey, you got to do that. We appreciate it, and maybe we come through at different times of the day when you haven't done it or you're just about to do it, but there is more dirt there than there should be. It's
in the road, in the road.
Curve, you're going up, your lights are on at night, if you lose traction, you can have a problem.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on, 72 Church Street.
Curve.
So this is a violation I'm bringing to your attention, it was on your desks tonight. If you just take a look at all the pictures that I have there. This is a depiction of a violation. The homeowner actually came to me with this violation, so the homeowner started removing trees and pushing some of his property back. It's right here on Church Street. His neighbor came out and told him that he was, are you aware that these are wetlands and you might not be able to be doing what you're doing? So he actually came right over to talk about it. If you take a look at the pictures, you can see he's really pushed a lot of the debris. There was maybe 3 trees that were cut down, but there was a bunch of brush that was also pushed, and it was all pushed really right up to the wetlands through flags number 4 and number 8 over there. The debris that he pushed up against is really kind of in the wetlands, so it's really close. There was some established lawn, well, partially established lawn in that area. It was mostly raspberry, which is a food source, and you know, so he knows that he has to do a remediation. That's not in question, and he's perfectly willing and compliant to do that. So the question here tonight, if you guys could just guide me, should we have this remediation done administratively, or should we have it done through the commission? And the reason I ask is if it goes through the commission, he's going to hire a landscape designer, a landscape architect, wetland scientist to come together with a plan. So because he was being so forthcoming, I thought maybe if we did it administratively, it would save him that expense.
Yeah.
He's trying to do the right thing, knowing that he did the wrong thing.
So if you feel like you can keep him course corrected,
Yeah, he's working with you.
he's working with you.
Easily.
You got that?
Yeah, I'm okay. He needs to understand your background and that the fact that you know what you're doing. It's not, they're not gonna put one over on you. That's my opinion, so I have no problem with it.
Okay, and in doing that, part of the remediation obviously is going to be putting wetland markers up there. There's also, it's a very healthy wetland back there, but there is a lot of barberry, invasive barberry. I don't feel good about making him eradicate all of that barberry because there's a lot in there, but I could have him remove and replace with native wetland plants
That's fine.
and hope that the wetland plants battle out the barberry.
We need a motion.
Yeah, just so.
No, we don't need a motion. No, this is just a discussion.
Just so he understands that if you disagree with his remediation, that you're gonna bring it back to us, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I haven't even issued a violation just yet because I wanted to throw this out to the commission.
We appreciate when people come forward like that. That's,
Yeah, the voluntary compliance is very good.
yeah.
So I think that's fine.
Okay, very good.
We'll,
Moving on, 370 Wheeler Road. Again, I'm just bringing this to your attention. There was a complaint was filed for excessive 5-gallon buckets and other debris that was being stored on the property. The zoning enforcement officer brought it to my attention when he looked at it and saw the proximity of all of these buckets and everything near wetlands, near an actual water course. So we went out to the property, we met up with him, and I issued him a letter of voluntary compliance to clean up the area, get rid of all the foreign debris, the plastics. Some of the containers were marked as chlorine and things like that.
He's a pool guy?
No. He's actually more of a plant guy, and he was using these for, there are buckets of rocks, there's buckets of topsoil, there's buckets of walnuts, so he was collecting.
Down the driveway?
It's down the drive. Oh, you know exactly where it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
I sent an email about this about 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and not- previous staff.
Well, you got to put
I
your,
had too many
put
things.
your name on a formal complaint.
Well, I wasn't in, I was like, well, there's a bunch of buckets there. Jesus, hopefully they're not full of anything nasty. Okay, well, then they're fine.
He's got a couple,
Walnuts, some more.
he's got a couple unregistered vehicles, which he knows.
Oh, now he's really.
All right, so we did give him time. He's an older gentleman. We gave him time on this because he's really kind of working on his own there. What's that? You want the buckets?
Just a few.
You want a few of them? He's got
Just enough so it's no longer a violation, right?
Yeah. I don't care about his violations, just the budget.
Question.
So I gave him until July 1st to get it all cleaned up. Go ahead.
You can't see any of these buckets from the Whitney Farms golf course that it abuts?
No,
Okay.
no,
On the other side of
no.
I like
You're on the other, yeah. No, you cannot see him from Whitney Farm.
that direction.
All right, so that was that, and that's all I have for you.
All right, so moving on all the way down to general discussion. We have a couple of minutes to approve.
Yeah, we can approve the minutes on the 12th. I was not here for the minutes on the 26th. I did not get a chance to watch the full video. I watched about half of it and then
Fell asleep?
asleep. Well, no, I did not fall asleep, but
Got bored.
there's been a lot of family stuff going on, so I've been dealing with that. So I didn't get a chance to go completely through the minutes of the 26th. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to, then they could put it to a vote.
I did review them. I don't see any concerns. Other than just, I can't understand how you couldn't be compelled to watch meetings, because I've done that before. Let me tell you, you're missing something. No, I don't have any concerns, so I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes for the March 26th meeting.
And I would, as the present commissioner, I would second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Kelly to approve the March 26 minutes and a second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Abstain.
By the,
And one
any abstentions?
And
1, 2, 3 abstentions for those who weren't present or watched the video completely.
Who was the abstentions? We had Ben.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Three commissioners weren't there.
The three people who weren't there.
Commissioner Sabia, were there minutes from the meeting prior that I think you made reference to them?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, those
Right, so
we can.
Now we're going to skip back. So now we need the regular meeting minutes for March 12th.
Can we start with who was not present at that meeting?
Everybody was present.
Well, hold on. You said they're good? They're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're good to go. Anybody not here for that meeting?
Want to see it?
No, we're all here.
No, we were all.
Everybody was here for that one. Okay, we need a motion to approve the minutes for the March 12th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 12th.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, sure.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. No abstention. Okay. Done and done. All right, so now moving on to what is prudent and feasible in state statutes.
So we had talked about this at the last meeting to have a general discussion about what is considered to be a prudent and feasible alternative. I am going to a little bit take the lead here on this conversation, but Andrew and myself and James have all sat down and gone through this. I'm going to ask for a little bit of patience if you'll let me just do my full spiel, and then we can go into individual questions. I'm going to start this by saying that there's really two buckets we have to look at. The first bucket is the way the state defines it and the way that we, staff, are given guidance by experts in the field for prudent and feasible alternatives. The second bucket or category then is how our town of Monroe regulations talk about prudent and feasible alternatives, which does have some additional wording associated with it that is unique to this town. So we'll kind of mesh the two together, but I'd like to talk about them very individually first. So Andrew put together a lovely little packet. The very first page is the state statute's definition of feasible and prudent. I will say that our our wetland regulations quote the exact same thing. So our actual definition and our wetland regulations do not differ from the state, which is feasible means able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles. And prudent means economically and otherwise reasonable in light of social benefits to be derived from the proposed regulated activity, provided cost may be considered in deciding what is prudent, and further provided a mere showing of expense will not necessarily mean an alternate is imprudent. So feasible means able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles. So when we talk about feasible, we're literally talking about constructability. We're not talking about whether planning and zoning would approve it or not approve it. We're talking about sound engineering principles. Can it physically, feasibly be constructed? When we talk about prudent, it means economically and otherwise reasonable in light of social benefits to be derived from the proposed regulated activity. What would be an example of social benefits? The state's in a housing crisis. The plan of conservation and development for the town of Monroe. We talk about trying to diversify our housing options. We have a lot of single family. We don't have a lot of age restricted housing that's in what I would call affordable range, affordable in the sense of like some of our ARR district housing right now is going for $700,000, $8,000. That's not downsizing. That's not, in my personal opinion, helping keep our senior citizens in town to be able to be closer to their grandkids. I think it would be nicer for us to have some more options in town that are townhouses or apartments or things of that nature. So that's a social benefit. One of the reasons that this local commission has the availability to make the decision of what that social benefit is because it's going to be a little unique from town to town. So what is the social benefit that's being derived for our town? Cost may be considered in deciding what is prudent. So we talk about going from a culvert to a bridge. If that bridge is an extreme cost, that can be considered as part of your consideration, but the mere showing of the fact that it is expensive does not mean it's imprudent, but you still have the availability to make that as a reason for it being a prudent alternative. Mike Ziska is an attorney that he teaches Casio courses. He's very, very active in the community. I think he writes the section for the CT bar training that happens every 2 years that we just took actually in March, a couple weeks ago. I just took it. He writes a book called What's Legally Required for the State of Connecticut. It is most people in Connecticut, it's a little bit of our Bible. Anytime we go in, he just updated, I think in 2023. We go to them to see what he has to say. He usually does a pretty good job at referencing case law as well. So if you see his highlighted area under making the decision for inland and wetland water courses, in addition to the criteria mentioned above, if an inland wetland agency makes a finding that a proposed activity may have significant impacts on wetlands or water courses, the agency may not issue a permit unless it finds that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. A feasible alternative, one that is able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles. The term prudent means economically and otherwise reasonable in light of social benefits to be derived from the proposed regulated activity. Cost may be included. If you go to the next page, he says, in order for an inland wetlands and watercourse agency to address the issue of feasible and prudent alternatives, the applicant has the burden of raising and discussing potential options to his or her actual proposal and explaining why none of those options would work. The agency is not prohibited from considering and dismissing alternatives raised by persons other than the applicant, including the agency members themselves. However, the burden remains on the applicant. An inland wetland agency may not place the onus on an opponent to prove that there is a feasible and prudent alternative. And I just wanted to bring that up because I do think that's important when we take into our consideration of what we're looking at. When we go to the next section, I'm going to skip one. So the next one's our zoning, our wetland regulations. I'm going to ask you to go to the next one, which is this, comes out of a binder. This is what we get from the CT Bar Association. They give a training every 2 years. It's an 8-hour training you take on a Saturday. And they go through different sections. One of the sections is inland wetlands. They write a really, really good binder where they update it every 2 years for all of the case law. They have their own section about prudent and feasible alternatives. They give a little bit of history about it on the first page. On the second page, the top highlighted area says, in the case of an application which received a public hearing pursuant to subsection K of section 22A-39B, a finding by the wetland agency that the proposed activity may have significant impact on wetlands or watercourses, a permit shall not be issued unless the commissioner finds on the basis of the record that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. So just reinforcing what we've already talked about. The amendment was intended to limit the applicability of the feasible and prudent alternative tests to only those hearings that were called on account of potentially significant impacts. So the state hypothetically, if you have a public hearing based on public interest, does not make you talk about prudent and feasible alternatives in any way, shape, or form. If you have a regular hearing, it does not require you to talk about prudent and feasible alternatives in any way, shape, or form. The state only requires that test to be conducted when a public hearing is voted on because of potentially significant activities. If the agency called a hearing only because of the submission of a petition by 25 or more persons, or only because it believed such a hearing would be in the public interest, and not because it feared a significant impact on wetlands or watercourses, the agency would not be bound by the feasible and prudent alternative test. And there's case law to back that up. A determination that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist need not be explicit or detailed, but there must be a substantial basis in the record for reviewing court to conclude that the agency reasonably considered the alternatives. An agency may require an applicant to demonstrate the absence of a feasible and prudent alternatives by analyzing other methods of utilizing the site, rearranging structures, using less fill, reducing the size of the structure, or even by combining adjacent lots owned by the applicant. It does not require you to have a site plan. The state does not require you to have a site plan. So you can have a cut and fill calculation that's part of the narrative that talks about a prudent and feasible alternative. And if this commission deems that to be appropriate by state standards, that can be considered to be a prudent and feasible alternative that's discussed. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a physical site plan with stuff rearranged by the state. So again, we're talking about these two different buckets. Now let's go to our local town of Monroe inland wetland regulations, which is the
Green highlighted.
the green highlighted. It says section 7. So this is copied directly from our regulations. When we talk about 7.5F, we require all applications shall include the following information in writing or map. So the town of Monroe requires all applications require a minimum of 2 other feasible, not prudent, feasible alternative site plans that were considered relative to impacts on the wetlands and watercourses, and an explanation as to why the proposed plan was considered the most feasible and prudent alternative, resulting in the least amount of impact to said wetlands and watercourses. So we require the town a minimum of 2 feasible alternative site plans. We are the ones that require the site plans, and we require them to be feasible. So if we go back to the definition of what feasible is.
Can I just
Yeah.
get clarification? Does that mean they need to submit 3 plans?
Yeah, that's what I was
Or
going
is it 2, one of them, they're alternatives, one or the other?
I think 2 plans, just 2
Because
plans.
the way I read this.
It says
is
2 other.
2 other feasible, so
So they have their original
you have your
plan.
1 and then 2 more.
Yes, they have their
You need
proposed
3
plan,
plans.
and then they need 2 alternatives. Yes, so 3 total plans.
Can I ask one clarification, just to make sure my brain's reading it right? So we talked first about the state, and there's the language in here about feasible and prudent alternative tests to only those hearings that were called for on account of potentially significant impacts. In other words, so essentially, there's not an obligation in a public hearing due to public interest or in a regular hearing. The state does not require those alternatives, but our language supersedes that.
Exactly. So we can make our regulations more restrictive than the states. We
But not-
can't make them less restrictive, but we can make them more. And we did so in this scenario. Now legally, this commission does not have to apply the prudent and feasible alternative test in order to accept or deny an application when it's of public interest or a petition. So although you guys are looking at it because we require it to be submitted, if for some reason you do find that there's a prudent and feasible alternative on a public hearing that was voted on for public interest or via a petition, just because one exists and this whole commission agrees one exists, if you still want to approve the application, you can. And if it would get appealed, it could not be appealed because there was a prudent and feasible
That's for a
alternative.
public hearing due to.
Public interest or a petition. The only time that they could appeal it because of the prudent and feasible alternative test was not either properly conducted is when it was voted on for potential significant activity. But so this commission, our regulations require 2 site plans. So no alternative that's just a narrative or things like that, or just a discussion, 2 physical site plans, feasible alternatives, not prudent. So we just want to see if the land is able to be constructed in a way that has other alternatives. And then we ask for an explanation as to why the proposed plan was considered the proposed plan, the plan that they're coming in front of us, is the most feasible and prudent alternative, resulting in the least amount of impact to said wetlands. So I would argue that if you are putting forward, if an applicant's putting forward prudent and feasible alternatives because we voted on it for potential significant activity, those alternatives should be as feasible and prudent as possible. But the reality is I think we've all talked about this before, we want them to come in with their best and final. So we want them to come in with feasible alternatives. So for example, 1314 Monroe Turnpike, one of their alternatives was that they went to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a zone change for a recreation and residential district. And as I look at this a little more closely, and I look at the definition of feasible, it was a feasible alternative. It actually created a cluster development, for lack of a better term, not a zoning definition by our definitions, but it physically clustered them together because they were 3/4 acre lots and it gave more area to the inland wetlands. That's feasible. Physically, that's feasible. Could it get approved through planning and zoning? The answer is no, but does that make it not a feasible alternative? According to these definitions, I think it still could be considered a feasible alternative. They're telling us their thought process for how they got to what they're proposing to us today, which was they came up with this feasible and prudent alternative because they think the pro forma works for them financially, but they couldn't get it approved through planning and zoning. That's how they got to their proposed plan that was there. And that's really what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out what got you to the plan that you're proposing to us now as the most prudent and feasible alternative.
But if planning and zoning says, no, it's not feasible in Monroe.
That's
doesn't
not the
meet- It doesn't
definition.
meet the definition of
The
feasible.
definition is saying feasible means able to be constructed and implemented consistent with sound engineering principles.
Got nothing to do with the regulation.
Nothing to do with the
Right.
regulations. So
Right.
sound engineering principles, yes, they could.
Yeah, but how would you how would you make the vote saying there's no feasible and prudent alternative, knowing that there was, it just can't get approved?
That's how they got to what they're proposing to you today.
Yeah, but you just said that there's a feasible and prudent alternative, and you got a vote saying there is no other feasible and prudent alternative. You just said there was.
I think it's a feasible alternative. It's not a prudent
Prudent one because
alternative
you
because
can't
they
get-
can't build it.
It doesn't
They
need-
Can't get the money for it.
Doesn't meet
But-
the alternative, so I think.
But don't they have to come in with feasible and prudent alternative?
According to our regulations, it says a minimum of 2 other feasible alternatives.
Okay, but if don't they have to come in with feasible and prudent ones when it's a significant activity?
We have to determine if there is a feasible and prudent alternative.
Okay.
They don't have to come in with one. That's what they're actually arguing. They're arguing that one doesn't exist.
I want to see what James DeMaio comes in for his 2. Because I'm excited to see it.
You didn't vote on it for,
Well, you still gotta come in with two feasible alternatives on plans.
technically,
Technically,
I know.
yeah, which is, I think it's kind of crazy
I
because
think
to
it's kind
me,
of crazy too.
I mean, if it's not an impact, if we say it's not a significant impact to the wetlands, why are we making people jump through
Well,
that
that-
hoop? I
why-
mean, sure, you can always.
We can
come
change our
something up.
regulations.
We can, we absolutely can't. It's an extensive process. It has to go to deep, it has to go whatever, but I do think that something to this nature would warrant potentially a relook.
I was gonna say, if we just said, let's follow the state regulations instead of our own, which are not that clear.
But we have our own and our own trumps.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
That's not changing it. And
I'm just
that's,
saying, if we change it, we could just say, we're just gonna adopt the state guidelines, at least now we're consistent with the state. Instead of this, well, what's your definition of two? Is it two plus the other one, or is it one
It
plus?
does say two
like,
other.
It's still not.
It does say two others. So technically, they should come to us with three
Right.
site plans.
And if I was writing this, I would say, come to us with three plans, one primary and two alternatives, so it's clear what that means, because right now it's not.
It says two other, I mean,
Yeah.
other means not the
word
first
other.
one, right?
Right.
Can I ask a question on this?
I'm going to just finish my one thought and then we're open for discussion. The last thing is 23 of 32, 10.4. I just want to point out that our regulations say, in the case of an application which is denied on the basis of finding that there may be a feasible and prudent alternative to the proposed regulated activity, which have a less adverse impact on the wetlands and watercourses, the commission shall propose on the record in writing the types of alternatives which the applicant may investigate. The subsection shall not be construed to shift the burden from the applicant in proving entitlement to the permit or presenting alternatives to the proposed regulated activity. So if you guys do deny an application in the future because you think there's a prudent and feasible alternative, you have to have in mind what that feasible and prudent
All right,
alternative.
so I have a question. So using a similar but hypothetical scenario, applicant comes in, says, I have this 15-acre subdivision that I want to plop 12 houses on.
We use a different example because subdivisions are a weird thing. Can we say a commercial, like a commercial property?
Commercial property.
Okay.
Okay, whatever, doesn't matter. I want to put a 20,000 square foot
Building.
building up.
Yeah.
And we look at that and say, okay, you're now in this much upland review area. Why not make it 15,000? That's more prudent. And then come back and say, well, why not make it 10? Like, when does the prudence stop?
I think it's a discussion. I think let's hypothetically say that it's I'm not going to name a brand. Let's say it's a box store.
Yeah.
So we talk about commercial box stores. Commercial box stores typically have a footprint in a minimum. So if they're coming in because they actually have a tenant for this building that's a specific box store, and that box store requires a minimum of 20,000 square feet, they can make the argument that it's actually not a prudent alternative for them to go down to 15,000 feet because the whole deal is dead. So whether you guys are willing to accept that or not, is up to this commission, but that's why they're saying it's not a prudent alternative, because the whole project dies because they just don't have the option.
Right. In that case, right.
If there are other similar businesses that are operating in less space, performing the same work.
I'm saying in this hypothetical scenario.
Just because one, Trader Joe's or some corporate says, well, we want this much. Well, hold it. There's a lot of other operating, profitable businesses that don't meet that and are not.
They don't have that tenant. If they have a potential contract, and they're developing this property for that tenant, that's their argument, is they don't have another tenant that's willing to operate under the space. And if you do, and again, I'm just pressure testing it from the other side, you set up a pro forma when you do potential development. You have an understanding of how much square foot you need in order to make it, a profitable business for you. So they do have something in mind of what it is. And the answer may be, if you think that it should be 15,000 square feet and you deny it because you thought it was a significant activity, I mean, most likely for them, the project just dies because they actually didn't have a prudent and feasible alternative. But it is a very gray area for this commission to kind of make that determination of, are you willing to accept their argument of why it is not a prudent and feasible alternative for
It
them?
does not need to be a prudent alternative. I think we just discussed, right? It only needs to be two feasible alternatives.
Again, now we're talking about two different things. So we're talking about, you guys voted on a hypothetical application to be a public hearing because of public interest. That does have to be a prudent and feasible alternative. If you want to deny it because of a
Right.
prudent and feasible alternative, where is that threshold? And the answer is, it is gray. I mean, it is gray.
Outside of that, so let's say we just think it's public interest,
Yeah,
and you still, based on our regulations, need to provide alternative plans.
yes.
Yes.
And they do need to be prudent, don't they?
They
No, they just need to be
feasible.
feasible.
So the only time prudent comes into play is if we say it's a public interest specifically.
That is how I read the very convoluted
Okay.
sum of all of this.
So I guess I'll go back and read this again too, but I thought my understanding was the submission needs to be prudent and feasible. The two alternatives only need to be feasible.
Unless it is,
Unless.
unless that one clause
Right,
triggers
yes.
the alternatives to be feasible.
Yep.
Prudent and feasible, unless you vote
Prudent
for
and
it to be a
feasible.
public hearing, yes.
So that's the only time that the alternatives need to be prudent, is if we say specifically on a public hearing that it is of public interest.
Yes,
Okay,
that is how
y'all understand that?
I interpret it.
I do to agree, but I also understand that this opens us up to litigation if we do not consider a feasible alternative. There was a development we approved that Dr. Clemens said a span is better than a culvert. We didn't like it town-wise, but we never investigated it. A span was less, was feasible, and according to the Department of Transportation, it was also prudent. We never discussed it. Well, I mean, we never.
We did discuss it,
We just discussed it, but we
and then
never,
you approved it.
I know, but we never asked them to give us that as an alternative. And by not doing that, after Dr. Clemens made it clear, and other residents said, specifically, I think Paula Gelli said it specifically, what about a span?
I would argue that you clearly discussed it, and because you approved it, you made the decision that that was not a prudent and feasible alternative. Yep.
I would say the same thing.
Okay, well, some of us approved it. But I want
The
to.
commission.
The commission.
Collective view.
Yes, but I understand that we got to be careful, we don't get into litigation associated with just blowing through things or saying it's not.
Okay.
We didn't ask them to do that.
Can I ask one? It's going to sound like it's a little bit veering off topic, but just as a clarification for myself. The logistics of things, if we approve an application that is presented to us with two prudent and feasible alternatives, but we approve the application as submitted, and it goes to planning and zoning. And planning and zoning has an issue with something in that application, but one of the prudent and feasible alternatives is what? Does that have to come back to us for an approval? So when we approve the application, we're not approving anything about those prudent and feasibles. They fall off of the application moving forward.
100%.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's make round two a lot easier for us.
Yeah, for some reason, which is kind of is kind of the point, is to give you guys, again, it's the burden is on them to prove it, but how did you get here? What else did you look at? Because when you do conceptual site plans, you throw everything at it. You literally sit down with a building of a certain size and things, and you move it around the site and figure out what it is before you actually draft it up. So the thought process is they looked at a couple different alternatives before they got here, and that's kind of what this commission is asking for, to walk us through that thought process.
So is it appropriate to have a motion to direct the staff to modify our regulations to be more consistent with the state?
It's up for discussion if you guys want to go down that path.
At their leisure?
You should see my zoning reg list of all the stuff I'm working through.
Okay, I'm making that motion.
If we're going to change the regulation
To match the states
to match the states,
when it comes to this
Yeah, to this item.
specific item.
if other things were tied to that, does that help or hurt? Does it,
Say more.
I'm thinking if that's going to be changed, maybe we should review other things in the regulations and have them changed at the same time.
Yeah, and I think, and I have that in the back of my head, if you guys are gonna do it, just so you know, planning and zoning changed our noticing requirement for, abutters. We changed it from certified mailing to a certificate of mailing. But the state statutes gives local municipalities full authority of how that noticing is done and what noticing even has to be done. So you don't even have to do abutters. I believe wetlands, some of that's written in the state statutes. I haven't done that research. So like, that's one thing that I have on my list to look at. So if we're doing these regs, I might look at that at the same time and so there's some little things, but we wouldn't propose anything to you without preliminarily proposing it to you first.
I assume we need a motion, like he said, to
I think-
change this specifically.
I think we should, just because I want staff to be very clear that everybody's on.
And if something else comes up that you're like, hey, maybe since
Yeah,
we're
well-
adjusting regulations, maybe we should adjust these too, we could discuss it.
Yeah.
There's no rush necessarily for this, but,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna make James DeMayo come up with 2 plans,
okay. There you go.
3 plans.
I think we need a little time to reread these. I appreciate you going through with us, but I'm not willing to vote tonight on changing this.
What if the motion were to have staff review the current town regulations and make recommendations in the
Which
areas
could-
that we should modify?
Which could be
Should
no
consider
mod-
modifying.
right, which might be no modifications.
So that way it's really just us motioning for you guys to start looking at it.
We're not approving any
make
changes or
suggestions
anything,
to
because
us.
we still would have.
Yeah, we'd have to see them and
We
have
have
a
to see
public
them.
hearing and all
Right,
that.
so that's all it is.
No, if you can come up with benefits, that's great. I appreciate it, but it would also give me time to reread these things.
Yeah, we're not saying.
It's not happening in a quick.
Yeah, all right. As long as everybody's
It's
okay.
gotten considerably
We
more
want to
busy.
motion that we support the idea of you guys reviewing and making
Yeah, we
recommendations.
can take a look at it.
That's fine. Okay. So is that what your motion
It's
is?
the whole blue
That's
binder.
what it was.
Okay. We have a motion to review and potentially update with some recommendations for our current regulations with respect to the feasible.
Andrew, make the motion sound good, okay?
Motion to have staff review town regulations to suggest changes.
There it is.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. All in favor?
Can I hear it again, please? Motion
Motion to have staff review the town regulations and suggest changes.
with benefits. I want to know I want to know why we would do it. What are the benefits?
We're not doing, hey, guys.
Part of the suggestion, right?
Well, I don't necessarily see a problem. I see that
I
there's.
know you told me last meeting we can't.
benefits.
You're saying is that's there's not going to be any doing of your thing.
Actually, we had a litigation the other day and we, in addition to the transcripts, we sent them links to all of the videos. So if anybody.
We still need a vote. All in
Yeas and
favor
nays,
of
yeas and nays,
stop reviewing and suggesting
Hey,
Changes with benefits.
with
changes with
benefits.
benefits.
Do we have your yay?
I'll just abstain. I'm not sure that we're gonna, I don't
Okay.
know that you would have prudent alternatives. I just don't, I don't see any benefits right now. You guys come to us,
But that's okay.
just abstain, please.
All right. And then moving on to public outreach.
Public outreach, we could talk about 2 things that we have in the works. One is the pamphlet that we've been working on. Me and Commissioner Zamory, we met today to kind of make some changes, and we've made some changes to the pamphlet. I think we're honing in on something. I think by the next meeting, Mark, by the next meeting, we could really have a mock-up that you guys could look at. We're editing text. We've talked about images on this pamphlet and moving them around. And we talked about some changes tonight. And we'll have that for the next meeting. It's going to be a long, if we should have it at the next meeting or not.
I'll bring the coffee.
We'll take a look at it, and then we're going to want to pass that pamphlet out to all the commissioners for you guys to make notes on before it goes into a final draft.
And I think it's fair to say also that as you and I have been doing this review, we've taken into consideration all the feedback to date.
Yes.
By the commissioners.
Yep.
And actually, I think we've incorporated most of that so far, so.
Correct.
With benefits?
With benefits.
Definitely benefits.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, me and Commissioner Smith, we've been working on getting a booth set up, a tent set up for the farmer's market. Commissioner Smith has spearheaded this, and we've got on June 27th at the farmer's market, I believe that's the second one, at the farmer's market, we're going to have a tent set up. We're combining this with some of our other agencies. Aquarian's going to be there. We're going to have some giveaways. And the goal of this really is to try to inform people. We get a lot of residents walking around, and we are going to try to grab them and talk to them about wetlands issues.
Don't cut your trees.
Don't cut your trees down. Know what your regulations are.
Can someone dress up as a tree?
I was gonna suggest, like, is there like a wetland biologist that could bring like animal, like, wow, salamanders or something like that?
Rick, turtles, Rick.
Ryan, if you let me know if this is.
Well, the reason I'm
No, listen.
not saying that this is easy. I'm not suggesting that, but like that's something that will draw people in. Like, don't cut down your trees.
You know, frogs and tadpoles. You know,
Bringing puppies.
yeah.
Or someone who does birds of prey that they can just have like.
Get over here, I'm so sick to,
I just thought, oh yeah.
Raven over here.
Rick, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think it's a great thing that a number of commissions are getting together, and Department of Health, the Water Conservation Commission, and ourselves, as well as Aquarian. We're going to give away a couple of rain barrels, which if you bought them, cost $85. I know, so we'll give some shower timers and some things like that. And I'll have a lasso, or maybe I won't have a lasso. But anyhow, we'll get people over to the. I think it'll be fine. Just 1 week.
And what do we have? We have Health Department, Aquarian, us, and
Robert Thomas.
Conservation.
Yes, the Water Conservation. And
Who from Aquarian?
she's director, Carolyn Giampi.
And I think she said she was going to man the table, right?
Yeah, she's planning on having, I think, 2 people there to address, hey, how many residents are on well water, how many aren't, whatever. So we really appreciate her involvement. We are going to spend a little money on a banner. So you won't be getting a birthday present, Kathleen, this year.
I heard it was coming out of my budget.
You haven't read the email yet. I'm working on it.
We're going to get a banner one way or another. The money will appear magically.
I can make a banner.
Huh?
I can make a banner.
Yeah, right. I know a softball team that does it in the trunk of their cars.
I have, yeah, I mean, I
We'll
have
talk to you.
I know what you mean.
the machine for it.
That might be a great way to go. The thing is, if we're going to do a banner, we didn't want to make it specific to this one.
I want to be able to reuse it.
Exactly. So,
It'll have our town seal on it.
right, where do we get it?
It'll mention, you have it. You have a high resolution, digital image
You have permission to use
in
it?
your
Do you have the
email.
high, you have the high res one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have permission to use it.
And we have permission to use it, yes.
Ooh, great.
So we're working,
It's not a lot of effort for a lot of payback, I think. It's good to get out there in the public and say, this is, we're working for you. Your clean water matters, ask us why.
Yep.
And maybe take them a rain barrel.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Please.
Who's making it?
A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We got a second. All in favor?
Aye.